We are, man. And I couldn't be more excited about tonight. I wish my grandmother was still around to hear this interview. So she was a huge Florida State fan. So she would be honored that and just amazed what we're doing today. So I'm excited about tonight.
Yeah, I think all of us are honored to have Coach Charlie Ward with us tonight from Florida State University High School, or Florida High, as my wife likes to call it, because she worked there her first 3 years teaching. But he, through his 6 years at Florida High, he has a state championship. He's made it very far in the regionals each time. Just a very good basketball program that they play the right way if you get a chance to watch them. He also has a couple other things in his background that are pretty good. I'm excited. I'm on a advisory board with him with the FHSA. So to hear when he speaks, people listened, and just to be in that room is awesome. But Charlie Ward also has a Heisman Trophy. I don't know if you knew that, Coach Teeden.
I did
And
not.
and a national championship at Florida State for football. He had a 9-year NBA career playing for the Knicks, the Spurs, and the Rockets. And to go along with that, his accolades in college football, he's also a college football Hall of Famer. So we try to keep track. I don't know what it is, Coach Ward, but you're a state champion. We've had those. We've had Hall of Famers, but I think your resume and just the man we're hoping to learn from you and hear about. We're very fortunate to have you on. So thanks for joining us, Coach Ward. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you guys having me on and look forward to chatting it up. I'm not sure if I can live up to the USAB coaches. That's a lot of wisdom that you guys have gotten. So hopefully I can add a little something to the mix. But don't judge me based on those guys, though.
Yeah, we had Coach Brost, we had Coach Amorosa, we had, I'll just say Raz because everybody knows Raz by his name. So, and now you, and we're trying to get some other guys. So we're pretty pumped to just continue that going. And so let's start, Coach. How are you wired?
I'm a wired. Sticks and stones, I guess, break my bones. But and words, of course, I've had a lot of words said about me and for me. So words normally don't hurt. But I'm a guy that's kind of been through a lot. Very competitive. In a lot of ways, quietly. I like to be the silent assassin, in a sense, but very competitive and like doing things the right way. Whatever the right way is, whether it's for or against, just making sure that it's the right way, and just enjoy sharing what God has blessed me with over my career, the wisdom that He's given me through experience, whether it's personal experience or me watching and listening to someone else. So that's the way I'm wired.
Coach, you've had an amazing playing career, and now you're coaching at a high school level, which I think is fantastic. Who are some of the mentors that have impacted your life, and what impacts did they have on your life?
From a coaching standpoint?
Yeah, it could be coaching, playing, just any of those mentors that really kind of maybe changed your direction that you were going, or put you on the right path.
Well, my first mentor was my dad. My dad was a coach and grew all my life, and I had an opportunity to sit at his feet for a long time. He was, when he come home, I got a chance to watch games with him, all types of games. That was the way he was wired. He's a teacher, so he used to come home from work or practice and go in, grade papers and watch sports while he was grading papers and eating dinner. And so I would go in and sit and watch games as well with him and ask questions. Then got an opportunity to be around him as a coach when I was a youngster. So I saw how much he cared about his players, to the tune of, you know, putting a mortgage up for one of his players who's in jail. That kind of that kind of stuff. That goes a long ways in just understanding how much you care about your players. You know, giving the players rides home, and you know, being the guy who mop the floor before practice and after practice. You know, wash the uniforms. You know, chastise the guys, loved on the guys. And so he was my first mentor when it came to, you know, just the way I'm shaped today, because I saw all of that. And then, of course, I had a middle school coach who taught me about humility. You know, when I was in 8th grade, I was one of the better players, and everyone looked up to me. And so there was a time when we were playing 2-on-1, you know, the drill. We were 1-on-1 actually, and the ball was on the floor, and a guy went to the floor, and I just reached down at it, and we came back down the other way. And I, you know, while the ball's on the floor, I laughed at the ball, laughed at it. And when we got back to the other end, the coach said, "Hey, you know, Charlie, you get on the line." And I was, you know, very embarrassed. He was like, "You think it's funny when the ball's on the floor? So I just want you to be mindful of next time the ball hit the floor, you need to be on the floor." So I had to run a suicide in front of the entire group. That was very embarrassing for, you know, the guy who's supposed to be the best player. And that taught me a valuable lesson that when the ball's on the floor, you're on the floor. And so after that time, that's the way I made my living. When I played basketball, every time the ball hit the floor, you know, I hit the floor. So I had to learn the tough way, but it was a great life lesson. And then, of course, throughout my college days, I had great coaches. Coach Bowden, coach was a Christian coach. So, and my high school coach as well, Charlie Green, football coach, was a Christian coach. And then I had some coaches that weren't Christians, but that taught me, you know, the other life lesson that, you know, you don't always. There are ways that you can continue to motivate your players to buy in and do the things needed. But those guys were very, very good tacticians when it came down to the details of the game and those types of things. And so I was very grateful to be under their tutelage. You know, Coach Pat Kennedy, Coach Jeff Van Gundy, Coach Riley. And I had an opportunity to sit and watch Coach Greg Popovich. You know, I was with San Antonio for half a season, and he was the one that taught me, you know, mainly about, you know, coaching the best players the hardest. Like, and, you know, I was shocked to see him coach Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan, and Tony Parker like they were, you know, scrubs. But they were our best players, and he coached them the same way that he coached everyone else. He didn't hold back in film sessions. And the good part about it was those guys respected him. And, you know, it was great for all of us who was sitting there watching, because if he can talk to them that way, then, I mean, who's he? I mean, he can talk to us the same way. And so I just learned a lot from him in that respect. Of course, that's why he's been successful. He's been able to coach, you know, to coach for a long time and get the best out of every player and to respect them for it. And so I just learned a lot from a lot of those guys that I just mentioned. And I did mention Coach Mark Rick, who taught me about being a family. One of the ways he taught me about being a family coach. Being a family coach, because he brought his family around while he was coaching while I was at Florida State, which is normally in college, that's not something you do. But we had a family atmosphere at Florida State with Coach Bowden being a leader, and we got a chance to know all their family. But I just admire Coach Rick and Miss Catherine and the way they went about loving each other and coming. They came to practice and watched practice, and so we got a chance to see how they interacted after practice and spent time. And so that was very valuable in making sure that you spend time with your family, even though a quality time, even though you may not have the quantity.
Coach, that was unbelievable. And I want to, we'll get to some of those relationships with those coaches later. And before we get into talking your coaching style and those things, I want to lean on when you were an athlete, a student athlete, and there probably isn't a greater role model of balance ever. I mean, maybe there's a few guys that did the multi-sports, but the way you balanced it with grace and actually overlapping sports is probably rare. And I would guess, and you can tell me you don't agree with me, and I would totally respect that because you lived it. First, I want to know the difficulties that you might have had as a multi-sport athlete. And then also, do you think that what you did will really happen ever again because of the way we're so specialized nowadays?
But to answer your first question about the difficulties, really the only difficulty I had was getting in shape for, basketball after my first year. And so this is something that I'm having to deal with a few of multi-sport guys that we have currently playing. Is I was blessed my second year in college to be able to go and play basketball full time. And the reason I brought up, some of the guys we're having difficulties with is the reason it was a blessing for me to go out and play basketball full time was I was able to establish myself as a basketball player. And so when I was able to establish myself as a basketball player that first year, because Coach Bowden allowed me to go out and play basketball full time that year, which was my first year of basketball, I was able to carve my niche into how I can be effective or be a part of the team. And so if I hadn't played that year fully and I was trying to go back and forth, then I would have gotten caught up in the wash of coming in, them not understanding or knowing what I'm capable of doing, and that I would have been more so of what you currently see today, which is guys having to make a decision, at one point because they're not getting the significant time in the next sport, in the other sport. And so for me, when I was able to go in and carve out my place in a sense on the basketball team, when I went and started playing basketball and football full time, then they had a place for me because they knew what I was capable of doing. I was a part of that core group. And so that is how I was able to make it playing multiple sports. In this day and age, that is not something that normally happens. One of the young men that I coached that's playing at the University of Auburn right now, he was able to establish himself as a basketball player when I first got there early on, like in ninth grade. And so that helped him. When he came back to football, he had a spot because we knew we needed him to be at his best when he came back to playing basketball after football season. And that is, why it's tough for student athletes today to be able to play, especially basketball and football, or even overlap sports, is tough when you haven't established yourself at any given point. Because there are going to be, in this day and age, there are going to be guys who specialize, and they're going to be there for the majority of the time. And if you haven't established yourself as a, I'll just say, basketball player, and you're a football player, then you're going to get lost because you're not getting there until November. You know, if your high school team is very good, very good in football, then most times you're not getting there until November, and you're not getting reps. And so when you come, you may get a chance to play, but it's not as much as you would like to play. And so that is the challenge that a lot of the student athletes are facing today. And you know, they're athletes that are you know, playing one sport, and so they're going to get, you know, the most of the reps when it's all said and done.
Coach, Trey, you brought up Trey Donaldson, and I got to see him. We play each other at the Capital City Shootout, and I got to see Trey up close his freshman year. So he definitely established himself against us, and he was very good. And when I found out that he played football as well, and I'm like, oh Lord, this kid can go. So I like how you bring up the point of establishing yourself. You know, outside of the season, you know, what suggestion would you give a high school coach to give that football guy who's a football player that's playing basketball with you? Where do you give them those opportunities? Where do you kind of build that trust? In what time frame?
Well, most times, the football guys, especially if they're in a quality program, they're in off season. Like now they're in spring training, spring football mode. Whether it's 7-on-7, which is another thing very similar like basketball. You know, 7-on-7 is taking off, so they have a schedule where 7-on-7 is on Monday nights, and they throw against other teams, you know, in leagues and those types of things in all season. And so the time that we have for them to try to prove themselves or get in the mix is normally in the month of June. And that's, you know, most times in the month of June, we work with the football coaches. They lift in the morning, and then we'll have practice for team camps for the weekend, you know, right after their football workouts and what have you. And so that's the time where we try to give them that opportunity to be able to establish themselves or get into what we're understanding what we're doing. The tough part is, like we had one of our players from last year who played basketball all the way up until his senior year. He was in the mix of recruiting. He's one of the top football players. Ashton, I'm drawing a blank on his Hampton. But he ended up going to Clemson. And so he was going through the recruiting process during the month of June. So I just told him, I was like, hey, I understand that you're going to be in football. You're going to be going to visit schools. I said, don't worry about coming to basketball. I mean, I try to be up front and honest with a lot of the guys. I'm not trying to deter them from not participating, but I want to do what's best for them. And so a lot of times, you know, I'll just try to help them try to make decisions that's going to be best for them, because I know what we have coming back, or what we're playing with. And if they're not going to get the amount of time that they desire or want, then I think it's just best sometimes for them to do what's best for them. And so that's why, you know, I just try to be as honest as possible with them. And like Ashton, I was like, hey, you go and take care of your business, make your decision on your college, go do your visits, whatever the case may be. Because as we all know, the calendars are changing. You know, time when we were being recruited, there's a different calendar. And that calendar has changed over these years, and especially now with early signing and NIL and transfer portal and all these different things. The schedules, the calendars are changing. And so when you have to make decisions, you have to make sure that you're doing what's best for yourself and not putting yourself in harm's way of missing an opportunity. And so we work really hard to give those guys opportunities in the month of June. And then in the month of July, we do skill development work. And it's normally after they finish football training. And so we'll come and just ask them to come and do skill development work with us in the afternoon. So we time it up to where it's not doing football workouts or even 7-on-7 when they do it in the evenings, but it's a time where they can squeeze it in, and we go for an hour and 45 minutes of skill development during the month of July. And if they can make it, that's cool. If not, that's on them. We don't force anybody to do anything, but those are opportunities for them to do it, because once August hits, and now that calendar keeps moving back, it's latter part of July is now when they start football. That's I don't. All I ask our guys who play basketball to do during football season is just to get shots up on the weekends. Not going through an extensive training, but just to move their bodies, because after football games, they need to move their bodies for lactic acid reasons, to get those out of their way, out of the body. So I say, hey, go and get a basketball and, do some shooting, just so you can have it handled. That's one of the things that I did when I was playing football. I would go in the gym after practice or late in the evenings during the weekends and just get some shots up on my own. And it wasn't anything structured, but just to get a feel for the basketball and shooting. So when I came back, I wasn't too foreign. I was probably a little bit out of shape, but it wasn't foreign to pick up a basketball.
That's great advice. I always give that too. Just like, hey, and I tell them too, hey, go throw a baseball. Like during our season, I tell them to be doing those things. All right. So we've never done this, but I'm going to try it and see how it goes. So I'm going to list a coach, and I want you to give just your first thought of this coach, and we'll kind of popcorn it. We'll try to go pretty quick. Like you already said, Mark Richt was a family guy. I'm kind of asking about your relationship. Coach Bowden.
Genuine Christian.
Patty the K.
Enthusiastically intense.
Pat Riley.
Mind numbing. Mind numbing. How can I say it? He likes to challenge your thinking. I'll say that.
Jeff Van Gundy.
Detail.
And you already said pop, so we don't need to get in there. That was good. I enjoyed that. I liked hearing that. So that was really good to hear that. I know you, and the reason we've never done it is we've never had somebody with that coaching, that many coaches in their background that have such prestige. Billy, go for it.
Yeah, man. I want to get into the coaching part now, Coach. So let's talk about a Coach Ward practice. What does that look like?
Well, one of the things that we work to do is we like to break it down in segments. And the segments can be, from offense to defense, And one of the things we always start off with is, dynamic stretch. Then we work to do a shooting drill of some form, something to get them moving. Layup drill, shooting drill. And then we get into nuts and bolts of breakdown of an offense or defense. And so we do a lot of scramble, 4-on-3, 5-on-4. We do disadvantage drills, working on just communicating X and out. Weak side, plan to, all those things we work on. And then from an offensive standpoint, we work on concepts. We have different shooting drills, some without the defense and some with the defense. If we want to work on, and then we have times for all of these. So I put a time frame on it, depending upon the time in the season. We may go 8 minutes. And if we want to just hit on something, we may go 6 minutes, where it's fast, in and out of a drill. Of course, in between maybe two drills, we have water breaks. We do an offensive defensive segment, then a water break. Then we have a time where we have zone offense and zone defense. We work on our zone. Those are normally a little bit longer, where we can sit down and teach and talk through it. And then offensively, the same thing. Whatever defense, and the crazy part, not crazy, one of the things that we do is we practice against an odd front and an even front. So regardless of what front a team gives, we know what we want to try to get accomplished from that. And so the offenses are very similar. Of course, they kind of change over the course of the year, depending upon what the guys can understand and comprehend and run. But we try to keep it as simple as possible. Do some ball screen stuff, movement, those types of things, off the ball screens, driving gaps, all those types of things. But the first thing that we normally do is I normally split up the teams. We've been blessed to have some really good teams over the years. And so I look to split the teams up every practice to be able to give us good looks against one another, but also it gives us an opportunity to look at combinations, who plays well together, who communicates well together. And also sometimes I put certain guys on teams just to see how they're going to lead their team. So we may have two of our best players playing with guys who may not get a lot of opportunity or may not be the best players, and see how they lead those guys. Are they going to take over? Or are they going to integrate those guys into, what they're doing? Or are they going to do mix of both? And so we kind of put them in these different situations during the course of practice to be able to see how they're going to handle it. And we do there's a lot of stuff we do throughout the year, but we want to trap. We work on our zone trap for a certain period of time, but we can also break that down where we do where we call it 4-on-4 trap. And so we have 4 guys around the perimeter, and we have 4 guys in the middle, and we give them a boundary, give them boundaries, and they have to stay within those boundaries, and they have to get 5 passes, or the defense can steal before 5 passes, they get points for it. And after each drill, there's a consequence. Either they run, do push-ups, or something for losing. And so after we finish the majority of those segments, at the end of some form, we mix it to where we run and then shoot free throws, or we play a game where we line everybody up on the team, and we put on the scoreboard the away team say has 6 points, and then everyone has to come up and shoot 2 free throws. And so if you make your 2, then the home team gets 2 points. If you miss a basket, miss a free throw, the away team gets a point. And so everyone goes through and put pressure on it. And then at the end, if they don't make it, there's a 17 on the line. And then of course, there are times where we do we mix in different situations at the end of practice. Just different types of situations, whether it's out of bounds, time on the clock, whatever time's on the clock, playing through those different situations. And we also, at some point, depending upon where we are, we'll do some 5-on-5. We do 5-minute games, we call them. And we'll give them an offense and a defense that they're going to play for those 5 minutes. And then we kind of coach them through. Of course, we keep score. And then, we can play as many 5-minute games as possible. Those are normally ones that we just let the clock go, let them play, because it's a part of conditioning as well. And they get pretty tired when it's 5 minutes. And you can tell, especially at the beginning of a season, it's a little bit better in the middle of the season and end of the season. And so, there are just different segments that we hit throughout the year, depending upon what we do.
Do you feel like your practices have evolved since year 1 to year 6? I mean, have you added more, or you scaled back? Because I remember, coming in, and I can only imagine with the wealth of knowledge you have coming in, like you want to get all of this in. But if you feel like you scale back, or you feel like I'm diving in and I'm giving it to everything I got to these kids.
Well, the good thing about us is we have a 7-period class, which makes life a little easier. And the way we go about doing it is, I call it stacking days. And so the schedule that we put in now, of course, you improve as you continue to move forward. But we started implementing small things within what we wanted to do from an offense breakdown, a lot of breakdown work from what we wanted to do. But of course, our first year, we ran a lot of sets because we didn't really know our guys, and we were just trying to give them some structure. Defensively, I relied a lot because I was just coming from football my first year. And so I relied a lot on Coach Steve Cherry because he just got finished coaching at TCC. I was just getting ready to turn into Tallahassee State College here shortly. But he just got out of it, and I relied a lot on him to kind of help me through that first year. And like you said, there are a lot of things that I had in my bag, but you can only do so much for them to understand and know. And so we progressed over the years. It does help to have guys coming back because you don't have to really start over. And that's one of the things that we've been working to do is make sure that we bring guys up, bring guys through the system. Starting at an early age, so they can understand terminology, understand expectations. And some of our guys that we bring up, they don't get as much playing time as they would like as a young player, was a freshman or sophomore. But the thing that we're working to develop is just when it's their turn, they can understand and know the drills. They can understand and know the expectations of what we're trying to get accomplished. And it's a kind of a plug and play type of system. And we don't do that for everyone, every player, but the ones that we feel that can help us, long term, we may sacrifice a year to where they can come up and learn our system, the way we go about, practice, habits, so we can start developing great leaders once our seniors leave. And this year we have a lot of seniors walking out the door. but we're going to have to mix and match some of those young players moving in. But to go back to your question, we didn't overload them early on. And then we had to scale back as well. Once we got to a point where we felt like it was overloading them. And more times it's when you start hitting the end of the season, when you just scale back, especially when you're in the playoff mode. You try to find what they do best. And we've had some blunders along the way where we gave them too much going into a playoff game, and they just didn't grasp it. And it came back to bite us in a sense, because that's time that we used during practice to give them something new that we didn't really perfect. And it came back to bite us because we didn't use the other time to perfect what we were already good at. And so, like I said, we've learned from our mistakes as coaches as well. And that's the way it's supposed to be, I think.
No, I've been there, man. It's a great idea in my head. Oh, we're going to do this. It's going to be great. And then it goes out. And you're like, oh my gosh, we just wasted an hour of our time. This is terrible. I've been there for sure.
I think the worst part, though, is sometimes to me, and I've had certain assistants with me a while, is they keep wanting to run that stuff.
Right.
That, like, you put in something in the spring and the summer. Yeah. Let's call it Aggie. We put something in Aggie. And like in the middle of February, the coach will be like, hey, should we run Aggie? And you'll be like, what? Or what about shuffle? Let's run shuffle. You're like, dude, I squash shuffle at Christmas time. So let's not talk about doing that anymore. All right. So Coach, you mentioned earlier how you're good at giving feedback. Or you're very direct. Maybe you didn't say you were good at it, but you're direct and you don't have a problem telling the truth. How are those playing time conversations? How do they go in your program? Are they one-on-one, or is it just understood? You relay it to them, but it's understood that you're not as good as these other guys. How do those conversations go in your program?
Well, one of the things that I share with them is my story. My story is, as I told you earlier, I was one of the best players, and that was the case, a good portion of the time. And even in college, when I first started playing basketball, I came off the bench until like after Christmas. And then coach, saw enough in me to put me in the starting lineup because of what I was able to provide once I got into the game. And then once I got to the NBA, I didn't get a chance to play as a rookie. I had to sit and wait my time. And then my second year, got a new coach in, and the new coach came in and said that you weren't good enough in a lot of ways, even though I was primed and ready to, compete for the backup spot, because Derek Harper, my mentor, my guy who took me under his wing, was still there. And so I knew I wasn't going to play over him, but at least I wanted to be able to compete for the backup. But the new coach was like, no, I'm going to bring in my own guy. So I had to sit and wait. While I waited, I continued to work and put the time in. And when my opportunity came, the new coach got let go right after All-Star break. And, the interim coach was the guy who was working me out. And so when I got my opportunity, I took advantage of it. And for those next 6-7 years, I was there. I was either the starter or the backup. And so I just share my story with them because I say, hey, I've been in your shoes. I understand everything that you're feeling. And then, while I was in the NBA, I learned about roles. As I mentioned, Coach Riley taught us about roles. And then I got to learn more about roles when Coach Van Gundy, because that's what he preached. And everyone had a different role. Offensively, everyone wasn't equal. And defensively, everyone was equal. Everyone had to play defense and play a certain way. And so that's where I got a lot of my teachings from. And then when we have parent meetings, I just let them know that this is the way we evaluate playing time. In the month of November, when we start, or really we start evaluating, now for those that are in the program, and then in June, everything's evaluation. So in June, when we're in team camps, yes, some guys are going to get more rope to make mistakes than others because they've potentially earned that, or we just let them know, hey, we're looking at we're evaluating every situation. And so if you continuously turn the basketball over, then, you may need to come sit down and watch. You may not be ready, whatever the case may be. And then depends on the team. If you have veteran guards and you have a young player that's trying to earn his way, and he comes in and he's turned the basketball over, he's not playing a high level, not playing defense, then he may not get an opportunity to have much leeway. But if you don't have veteran guards and you need him to get some experience, then we'll have him make mistakes during the summer and help correct them through those mistakes. And I think that's something that we try to share with our parents and share with our players, even when we have exit meetings. We talk about role play and things that they can improve upon. Like as I go back, I talk to the parents. I say we all have roles, and we talk about role play and how that goes. And when we are out of our roles, we have dysfunction. And so we all have to play our roles in order for us to be successful. And I talk to the parents about their role, the coaches, their role, the players, their role. And, of course, you have parents who are who they are. And then that caused some dysfunction.
Well said.
Yeah, it caused some dysfunction. But we also have to be mindful that, your kid, your son is one of the many and the whole. And so we can't cater to just your son. And I try to relate to them that when you're part of the team, our team, all of these are your sons because you just adopted all of them. And so that's something I try to share with them at the initial onset, that we're all one team and we all should be supporting one another. And we all have roles. Some guys' roles may be to come in and practice and give us a great practice. That's their season of life. And I always tell them that, regardless of what role you're in right now, that role can change at any given time. So you just have to be prepared and ready for it. Some get it, some don't. That's normal. But we have to be at least consistent. And like we tell them, everyone's not going to get an opportunity to play every game. That's just, we're a competitive team. And on competitive teams, we have to find the guys we feel give us the best chance to be successful. And that is based upon our evaluation. And I just shared with them, I was like, hey, you all as parents and as players have to trust us as coaches that we're going to do what's best for the group. Just like we have to trust the parents are going to do what's best for the group by getting your child to practice on time. If they need some money for a trip, we need whatever the case may be, being there to help support, and vice versa. We're here to, help you as parents. If your son needs some assistance in some area, let us know so we can be that village to be able to help them. And so, we just try to be upfront with all of them about playing time. And some, like I say, some get it, some don't. I share this part of it. Anthony Robinson, who is currently playing in Missouri right now. He didn't start until his junior year. And he could have easily started his sophomore year. But I shared with him, we had a veteran team his sophomore year. And I felt, even though he was a sophomore and he was still growing and developing, I felt that he was better coming off the bench for us because we had other guys that could be in the starting lineup. And for us, he was better than whoever the other team was going to be bringing off the bench. And so I convinced him to say, hey, and his parents, even though his parents was the athletic director and his mom kept the stats, and they were both coaches. And so I just had to convince them that, and him, because he was frustrated at one point about why he was coming off the bench and those types of things. I was like, hey, you're a better fit for us and this team coming off the bench. You give us an advantage coming off the bench playing against the other team's backups. And so he struggled a little bit with a little more than a little bit with it. But he had to trust that we were doing the right things for the right reasons to be able to help the team. And so, like I said, we just have to do our evaluation, and we give guys opportunities throughout the summer, into the fall, and then in preseason, and then we just let them know also that during the preseason phase, all the way up until after Christmas. After Christmas is when we would start to nail down our rotation. And the situations that we put you guys in all the way up until that point is where our evaluation period, evaluation comes in after when we start to define roles. And so, I say during this time is when you're defining your role. You're doing this evaluation period. And some guys can handle, big minutes and some can't. And so we work to try to put them in situations throughout that evaluation period to where we start defining those roles and who's in the rotation in the month of January and February going into the playoffs. And then we roll with, those 7 or 8 or 9 guys in rotation. And then, of course, the higher you go in the state playoffs, the rotation gets a little smaller.
Yeah. I always say to my guys, if you want to know who really, who my best 5 is, look at the end of the game and look who's playing and say, all right, these are the guys that I trust the most when it matters the most. You know what I mean? So right. It's always a tough conversation because some guys do come off better off the bench. They play better and they don't right. maybe even understand it or see it. You mentioned Pop.
Just to go back, piggyback off of that one, sometimes the 5 at the end of the game sometimes are the 5 that's playing the best. And right. So I've had sometimes a starter sitting on the bench because another guy's in that group that's on a run, on a roll. And so I kind of go with that group. If a group is on a roll, then I normally go with that group. But yes, I definitely go with the best 5.
Yeah. You mentioned Pop earlier and his, I wouldn't say poor treatment, but just his holding his best players accountable. Is that something that you've kind of taken that same mantra with your own teams, or do you make it a point to really to hone in on some of your best guys? I know it's a little different now because kids and families can get upset and say, I'm out of here. Do you try to do that yourself though?
Yes. I mean, that's one of the things I think they like. Because I mean, we tell them up front, my coaches as well. We tell them up front, we got to be able to coach you hard, because if we don't coach you hard, then we can't talk to the other guys. Like, everyone's looking at our relationship. And so I've gone off on a few guys, our better players at any given point, when they're not giving us what we need, and if they're setting a bad example. And so, like I said, I've been all these positions, and I've seen coaches that have done a great job, and the best players have respected those coaches. And of course, you have to love on them as well. But when they're not doing or carrying their end of the bargain, then you have to, let them know. And so there's a give and take, a fine line in a lot of ways, but they have to understand, know that you care about them, and that, when you care about them, you're going to hold them accountable to the highest standard. We always talk about, we talk about our expectations sets our standards. And so, a lot of guys have high expectations of going to college. Well, you got to have high standards, work ethic, discipline, your character, your attention to details. Because once you get to college, understanding concepts, offensively and defensively, situations, terminology, once you get to college, this gives you a leg up. If you can just understand these basic details, especially now with the transfer portal, high school kids, these guys, if they understand what we're giving them, then, it's an easier transition for them in college because they at least have an idea. It's not the whole nuts and bolts of what college is going to give you, because, next level is always a little bit faster. But at least you can have a foundation to know what a pin down looks like and how to guard it, catch and shoot, those terminologies, what that looks like or what it sounds like or what it look, what you're trying to get out of it. X and out, as I talked about, those are terminologies that you're going to hear, or you're going to at least be in a rotation wise understanding. But if you can understand those things, it'd be a lot easier. But yes, I do work to hold everyone accountable, especially our best players, because I mean, you got to hold them to a high standard because you expect them to be the best for you when you need it.
So, Coach, you mentioned it earlier. You mentioned just now, athletics. There's a constant changing of the landscape, and we're talking transfer, talking NIL, talking mental health. Even a lot of that is new to the world that we live in. Do you have any thoughts on those things, or how? I would believe your voice would carry a lot of weight with student athletes. How would you advise a student athlete in all this craziness?
Well, one of the things I know we've established this year, and we got it from our girls team, and I'm sure there are other teams that do it, but our girls started it. We started with sports psych, and so we've been blessed to have a relationship with Florida State, in their sports management department, and the counseling sports psych department. What sent us a couple of this year was a young lady and a young man who came over once a week and talked with our guys for about 30 minutes. Just that whole sports psych world outside of basketball, and they thought it was great for them and their mental health, because as coaches, one of the things we try to do is give them current events, periodically, just to talk through things that may be big in the news, that some people have made mistakes, or whatever the current event may be, but just talking them through just choices that one has made and how it can affect your life, so quickly. And so we work to talk through those with them to help them understand that, you know, your choices can definitely be can take you down the wrong path really, really fast, as well as give you opportunities later on if you make good choices. And so, just talking to them, talking through that with them, and the NIL and transfer portal in high school. Of course, it's you know, I guess it's some form of transfer, especially in Florida, with open seats, where you can move from one school and go to another school and still be eligible to play in the same year. To me, that's crazy, but it's happened, and you see guys doing it, see athletes doing it consistently. I'm not sure how that pans out from an academic standpoint, but things are changing. And one of the things that we talk to our guys about, because we've had guys, you know, come to us and we've had some leave. A lot of them leave because of playing time, not because of the program in a sense, but just because of playing time. And we've gained some guys transferring in because they like what we do. And we've been able to get guys, multiple guys each year going to college, which is something that, of course, every player, not everyone goes, but we've had enough go to where people feel like they want to be a part of what we're doing. We also travel, give our guys experiences outside of our little city here, which plays a big part in, you know, guys wanting to be a part of the program as well. And I mean, you know, as coaches, we've always, if you're a quality coach, you have to make adjustments. And so to me, this is no different. And you do have to talk to your guys about these spaces because we want to educate them on, you know, and I always say, this is something I live by. When you make a decision or you make a choice, you have to think through whatever that choice is. You have to be willing to live with that consequence. And I just go back to my story of when I made a decision that in college that I was going to play basketball my senior year. And so I knew playing basketball my senior year would potentially forfeit my opportunity to play in the NFL because I was going to miss the combine. Even though I did, you know, pro day on campus at Florida State. And I got an opportunity to talk to a couple of NFL teams and all those types of things. But I made a choice. I made a decision. I was going to play basketball my senior year. And I knew that potentially could end my NFL opportunity. And my prayer was to open the door, close the door, and it did. It closed the door in the NFL, but that was my choice. And I didn't have to blame anybody for it, but it was a choice that I made. And so I think educating our young people on their choices and be willing to live with those results. So if you're going somewhere else and want to transfer, I mean we've had guys transfer out. And we try to talk to them, but they came in with their mind already made up. I'm sure y'all have seen that before. And there's nothing you can say or do to change that. And so we just work to try to help them or support them however best we can. But you know, when it's all said and done, the goal is to try to keep as many as you can. And give them the best experience possible so that you can be successful. But more importantly, you know, while you're there, educate them, you know.
Yeah. That's well said, Coach. I mean, I think Joe said it a couple of times, you know, early on in this, you kind of take it personal when someone wants to leave or, you know, you kind of take offense to it. But inevitably, it may have been the best move, and they have to live with those choices. So I think that's well said. And the other part of it is that, if you're a quality coach, you have to adapt. Like you're not going to be able to stay in this whatever rut we're in, or whatever the case may be. We have to adapt. And one thing that I don't think we're adapting as a state is the shot clock. And I know you're a big proponent of that. You're for the shot clock. You wanted to see it happen in our state. What do you say to the naysayers that all have all these excuses against the shot clock?
Well, I've been a proponent for it for the past 2 years. I've been trying to get it implemented. We have gotten it implemented in an option form where both teams can and that was essentially they wanted to save more data, but more importantly, it was just they wanted more time to try to figure out the whole deal. But as we just talked about, the NIL, transfer portal, all those things have evolved. And the shot clock, there are some truths to it when you're naysayer. One is, there's a cost. Yes, there is a cost. The second one is, there's a cost for gas that you have to pay. So there's a cost for a lot of things that we have in our day and age. But for those, we have to budget and we do whatever we need to do to make sure that we have gas in our car. So we will, whatever it takes, we're going to make sure we got gas in our car. We're trying to move somewhere. And so that's one, it is a cost. The second thing that a lot of people that are against it, who is going to run it? That's another truth, like who is going to run it? And then really the third thing that a lot of the naysayers is they don't want to change their thought process towards the game. And there are a lot of guys who are on board now that at the beginning they were like they weren't on board because they were strictly looking at it from an offensive standpoint.
Yep. And
so if you put on your coaching hat, it gives you as a coach more opportunities and more options or more strategies. And I'm saying a whole lot more, but it gives you more strategies throughout the game. And then if you take off the fact that it is not just an offensive thing, but it can be a defensive thing. Because I sit here and watch games that like everyone, like you guys as well, and you see teams that are playing colleges and the pros is playing a shot clock. The defense is rewarded as well. So if you play good, solid defense for 35 seconds, then you get rewarded with a forced shot or an opportunity to get the ball back. And so those things, those are the things that I admire the most about the shot clock outside of progressing the game. As we know, the game has progressed to where it's playing at a different level. The athletes are different. And I even go back to why the shot clock was implemented in the first place and in the NBA. And it was strictly because of fan experience and player experience, because the players weren't developing and they weren't scoring a lot of points because teams were holding the basketball at any given point, because at any given point, especially late in games. And I think that's where we have to progress the game as well, because now we're up in ticket prices to get in games, and our players are getting better. The shot clock is not going to improve scoring. That depends on your talent. So, if you don't have talent, whether you have a shot clock or you don't have a shot clock, your scoring is going to be low. But what it does improve is it improves possessions. And the floor, if you play with a shot clock or coach with a shot clock, you can tell the difference between those games because it is a consistent flow throughout the game. And sometimes you don't even recognize that there is a shot clock because everyone is playing with a consistent flow. Even at the end of quarters, we charted our shot clock games, a few of our shot clock games this year and our non-shot clock games this year. And there's about a three possession difference between the shot clock games and non-shot clock games. And most of the possessions where the ball was being held was all mainly late in quarters. Very few times where the ball held during the middle of the quarter. But at the end of a quarter, we charted, there was always that 55 seconds, minute, whatever it was always around that time where the ball was being held. But if you add a shot clock into that mix, now you have an option to have a 2-for-1 situation where you can get it twice in a 55-second chance or 55 seconds at the end of a clock, or you can hold it for your 35 and shoot and then try to get another possession. But the good thing about it is both teams now have a choice to make. Right now, the only choice we have if we want to get the ball back is to go and trap the basketball to get it out of their hands to get them to shoot it quicker. But if you have a shot clock, it gives you that other option where you don't have to do that. You can just play it out and then move it. That's what I mean by give us more strategies or more options to be able to do things where you don't have to. It's not cookie cutter as much as we like to do. But the tough part about it is coaches sometimes don't want to progress because it is easier. You don't have to think through. You don't have to think through those situations with the shot clock. How much time you want to shoot. What's the best time to shoot? All these different strategies that you have at your disposal. Are you going to double the ball? At the end of the clock each time. Just those types of things. Now you have to think through some of those situations. But once you have a system, the setup is always tough. Just with your computer, with anything when you're setting something up, it's always tougher and longer. But once you get it set, it's a lot easier to implement over the course of time. And I think with the shot clock, once we start to get it implemented into games, people will start to see that. I know the fans already, the ones that come to our games, they enjoy it. Our players, I asked them, they asked me, Coach, are we playing a shot clock this game? And if you see their face when I say, no, we're not, they're dejected because they know, especially if they're playing a certain type of team, they know that they're going to have to guard for, 45, 50 seconds in certain times. But with the shot clock, they know that the pace is going to be faster. And it's just one of those things that they like doing. And so
you have a clock in your gym then?
We do have a clock in our gym. But the crazy part about it is, and this is the thing that a lot of people, yes, we do have for our games. Right. But the way we practice is we segmented that thing out for like we make them guard for either 30 seconds or 25 seconds, because that just gives them an opportunity to understand that if we press, we can take 10 seconds off the clock, and now we got to guard for 25 seconds. What are we going to do from an offensive standpoint, and what are we going to do from a defensive standpoint to combat or to play? And so there are different strategies at the end of a clock you can run. If you watch it, there's pick and roll, there's the go screen, there's an ISO, all those things. But whatever your coaching technique or method is you want to do at the end of a clock, those are things that you work on. And then from a defense standpoint, are you going to guard the basketball one-on-one? Are you going to come late with a double team with 3 seconds on the clock to force somebody to make the next pass, and then scramble out? These are things that you can, implement into a game with the shot clock. But more importantly, the fan experience. I just use this. Our last game, we played against Providence in this Sweet 16. And we held the ball. They held the ball for a good portion of the game because we knew what kind of game they wanted to play. They were going to move the basketball around. They're going to make us play defense. And so we had to play the same game. So we did the same thing. The score at halftime was 20-19. Yes, 20-19. And third quarter comes around. We go back and forth game. They go up by, I think it was maybe 5 points or 4 or 5 points going into the fourth. In the fourth quarter, they go up eight or 9 points with 7 minutes left in the game. Out of those last 7 minutes, they held the ball for almost 5 minutes of the fourth quarter when they were up 9. We ended up chipping away because we forced them to turn the ball over because they were dribbling around, and they ended up forcing them to turn over a couple of times. We came down and scored multiple times back to back. And then we ended up going into overtime. So in 4 minutes of overtime, we had both teams we had 3 possessions. They had 2 possessions.
Wow.
So we held the ball for the first 51 seconds. We scored. They came down and shot it within like 20-some seconds, and they scored. We came back down, shot it within 27 seconds, I think it was, and we missed. They held the ball for the rest of the time until we got the rebound after they made with 13 seconds. And so I sat and talked to the referee. I said, when we held the ball, I said, I hate to do this, but this is the way we're going to have to do it. Like, this is terrible. I'm sitting there talking to the referee like, this is terrible. That we're sitting here having to hold the basketball as opposed to allowing our players to make decisions on the floor. And the other thing about the shot clock is when you have a time limit, it also helps you to focus on what you need to get done.
No doubt.
So that helps as well.
Yeah, it helps development of young people, definitely. Like I'm so looking forward to it for so many different reasons. One, I've been in situations where the team, you think they're going to throw 500 passes until they get a shot. We're not a pressure scramble type team. We're pack line, and they're just going to sit there and run their offense, and you're trying to change it up on the fly. But you watch these colleges, they'll run the 1-2-2, the 2-2-1, just to kind of run that clock, like you said. But I'm also, if you're a coach and you like offense, as most of us do, right? We like pretty offense, even though we know we don't score very much out of it. But for some reason, we feel good that it's pretty.
Right.
You can run so much more stuff with the shot clock because the counts aren't there. All the 5-second counts. I mean, there is the one once you pick it up, but you can dribble and guys can get open and you can run those sets and do stuff like Purdue does, or, you name the team. They all run UConn and all those guys. Like, you can do that kind of stuff that you already want to do, but you have to adapt it because your kid can only hold it for roughly 12 seconds between dribble, pick up, dribble, or vice versa. So, yeah, it's got to happen. And for those of you that are listening, and hopefully we got some people in the state, on April 21st, the state board of directors for the High School Athletic Association, they're having a meeting. We urge people getting up there, standing in front of those people. You get 3 minutes to talk. I know it's hard to do on a weekday, but what they're doing, what the state is, the state board is doing, and Coach Ward can tell me I'm wrong or right, but from my understanding, they're almost challenging us to how serious we are about this.
Right.
And that's what they're doing. And that's why we need to get some sort of army there to fight for it, because otherwise they're going to say, well, if no one comes and argues for it, is it really that important? And I think that's what they're kind of doing.
I think Coach Ward hit it on the head. It's we're going to figure out how to put gas in the car. Like, we always have reasons why we're not going to do it, monetary, whatever. And I wanted to ask Coach, was it hard to find someone to run the shot clock? You know what I mean? Like, that's you said that as an excuse, but I know, in Georgia, they figured it out. They got people manning the shot clock. It's running smooth. Of course there's going to be hiccups, but
Right.
I don't know.
Well, there are 27 states now. 2 years ago, when I started doing, 3 years ago, when I started doing some research on, shot clock, I reached out to California, talked to their state association, because they've been doing it since 80. The girls started back in 87 or 86, 87. The men 10 years later started. And I asked them about all the questions that people had about the cost and who runs it, and about the small towns, being able to, afford it, and who's going to run the clock. And so they gave me all the different scenarios. And of course, early on, you have your hiccups. I mean, because it was new and people had to adapt and, figure it out. But I know for us, we had a basketball intern from college. One of our basketball interns from Florida State ran it. And if he wasn't able to run it, then one of our assistant coaches ran it for us. And then if he wasn't able to do it, then our athletic director jumped in for that game to be able to run it. And of course, the first year we had it, we put it in. We just had the shot clock with the time on it, and so we had two clocks essentially, where if we had a shot clock game, we used the shot clock and the time that was associated to the shot clock. We used that as our time. And then we used our big board as our score, score, fouls, timeouts. That's where all those things were. And then we were able to get scoreboards that connected to the shot clock. And once that happened, everything was synced. And so we were able to use the scoreboard and the shot clock that was above the basket. And they were all synced together at that time. And it made it a lot easier because one guy could control all of it because it was all connected. And then one of our players who was a senior last year, not this past season, but the year before, he went on to become a manager at Florida State this year for basketball. And we had a shot clock game, and I called him to see if he could help out. And he was like, sure, coach. So he came over and helped us, with that game. And, it was easier for him because, of course, they have it in college and he does it in practice. And so he was familiar with it. But that is the way we were able to, just a little planning, just like anything else.
Find a way.
And if you delegate someone to be that person to find a shot clock operator, then you can delegate a person, and the person can be an adult, a volunteer. We played a game this past year in Gulf Breeze, and it was their first time. They had a shot clock, but no one wanted to play with one over there. But we were the first team that wanted to play with one, and they had a young lady on the clock. She was an adult, and they had it connected to their scoreboard. So she did it. I mean, it was her, and that was her first time. And there were no hiccups. Like, and what I try to tell people is, a lot of times, a lot of coaches don't want to use it because they hadn't prepared for it, which I totally understand. If you haven't prepared for it, but to me, it doesn't affect the outcome. That's the part that I have a tough time with. I'm like, it's not so much the outcome, because we've lost with playing with it, and we won playing with it. And so the outcome is not the big deal. The big deal is just, of course, we're trying to get it implemented. So just getting our guys used to it, playing with it. And that's why they like playing with it, because they understand the pace is going to be, different. And they hate playing against, playing without it, because they know that at any given time, they may have to play, that 55-second defense.
Yeah, that's no fun. And like you said, player experience, fan experience. Coach, we're going to get you out of here. We really appreciate it. Hopefully we can get on in the near future, because I do have page 2 of questions to ask you, and we can go on all night, man. You killed it. So thank you. We really appreciate it. I hope to see you in June in Gainesville at the FABC camp, and we really appreciate your time, Coach. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. I also see you there April 22nd, that Monday, in front of
that's right.
the board.
That's right. Well. I'll be there.